Hi, everyone. I'm Karen,
And I'm Gloria.
and we are here for the company. This is the podcast where we sit down every week and discuss whatever we want, ranging from true crime to uncalled for behavior and crazy things that were taught maybe in the church when we were kids. That's where we're going today.
But first, how was your week?
My week was good, I think. Just a lot going on. We're almost done with soccer. We're almost out of spring soccer. We have wrapped up spring gymnastics, so we're going into summer gymnastics. So it was good once I got through different parts of my week, and then little breakdowns here and there, but it's fine. And then got up this morning, and my goal for this weekend is to clean. So I cleaned my bathrooms that are upstairs. The girls cleaned theirs downstairs. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Good.
How was your week?
My week was really good. I'm always happy when the week is over because we have school, and on the weekend I actually get to chill a little bit, as much as I can chill having 4 kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was pretty good. No complaints, really.
That's good.
I did have to stay up very late last night, and that was very hard because I'm not used to doing that.
Oh, yeah, because your daughter had that thing.
Yeah, and they got home at 2 in the morning, 2:30. So I'm tired today.
Yeah.
But I still got up and made breakfast and did all the things.
You're so good. It was funny. Sean watched me make my eggs this morning because, I've been working on that. And
Yeah.
he looked at my bowl. He went, "That's a lot of egg." And I was like, "You're telling me."
You're like, I'm trying to get protein in.
Yeah. I'm trying to make it work here, dude.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're probably touching on a topic that most people find controversial. We're going to talk about purity culture. Gloria and I were both raised in a church that I don't think our church heavily, by the time we were in high school, was not heavily teaching purity culture classes and stuff like that.
No. Well, I will say that before you guys got there is when the purity culture thing was heavily introduced with the previous pastor. And I was young, but my sister was a lot older than me and has more experience of what it was like before you guys ended up moving out where we were.
Yeah, I don't ever remember a structured class being taught.
Me either.
While I was there. But purity culture at the time was unescapable, I think.
Yeah.
Even we'll talk about some experiences I had, but even all the most of the guys I dated were very heavily into purity culture, and different churches I visited. So yeah, we're just gonna dive in. We're just gonna rip off the Band-Aid.
All right,
and dive in. So I'll let you tell us what purity culture is.
For everybody that doesn't know what purity culture was a movement in the 1990s within Christianity, which emphasized sexual abstinence before marriage. It was a set of beliefs and practices primarily within religious communities, viewing sexual purity as a marker for personal worth and holiness. It often portrays sexual activity as a source of shame and social stigma, particularly for women, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But dating was discouraged entirely as to abstain from sex. They were like, just don't date anybody.
Yeah.
And like, if you've been a teenager before, that's like impossible. We all went through puberty. We all know what it feels like to have these first time feelings that you don't even know what to call them. You don't know what's going on. And for parents or churches to be like, well, just don't date anybody is crazy. Purity culture told you that there was only value in your virginity. If you weren't a virgin, you had no value whatsoever. Basically, you're broken. You're trash. Women and girls were told to cover up, dress modestly, to avoid arousing sexual urges in men and boys. Because that is our responsibility, apparently.
Yeah.
They also were super big on gender roles. Masturbation is discouraged more strongly for women than men. And anything outside of marriage was considered a sin. If even making out, they were like, that's a sin. You're dirty. You're damaged. You're broken. You're worthless, basically.
Thanks, Gloria. I just defined all my childhood trauma in one sentence.
Same. These are my same feelings. Also, one thing I thought was crazy, because I have never been to one, and I don't know if you have. I highly doubt your dad would have taken you to one of these, but they used to have purity balls. Did you know that?
So I read about that when I was doing this research, and I went, what the hell is a purity ball?
What is happening?
I imagine it's like a debutante, like coming out as clean and pure. Yeah. Right. No, my dad did not.
No. Which, let me tell you what these balls were about. A purity ball is a formal dance event. Okay. The events are attended by fathers and their teenage daughters in order to promote virginity until marriage. Typically, daughters who attend a purity ball make a virginity pledge to remain sexually abstinent until marriage. Fathers who attend a purity ball make a promise to protect their young daughters' purity of mind, body, and soul. It says, proponents of these events believe that they encourage close and deeply affectionate relationships between fathers and daughters, thereby avoiding the premarital sex activity that allegedly results when young women seek love relationships with young men. It says critics of the balls argue that they encourage and engrave dysfunctional expectations, yes they do, in the minds of young women, making them vulnerable to believing their own value is as property, and teaching them that they must subjugate their own mental, physical, and emotional well-being to the needs of potentially and actually abusive partners. Also, purity rings are given at these events as well.
So, I will tell you guys, I was told, I don't even remember who. I wanted a purity ring so bad. I remember, yes, I was not allowed to have one. This is not from my dad. So, disclaimer here, and I'm just going to put it in as a blanket disclaimer. Gloria and I did not necessarily learn about purity culture from the church we were in. I cannot express to you how much this was just known during our time growing up, and it was influenced by everyone around us. I've gone to many churches. I even went to different churches with different boyfriends. So please know that in this, we don't mean anything against our parents, against the churches we've been to. We're not going to name any churches or anybody, but we are going to share how these experiences shaped our thought processes and even carried over into our marriages and are shaping how we handle teaching our kids. we don't teach our kids differently from our parents because our parents did terrible things to us. Mm-hmm. We teach our kids differently from our parents because we saw the harm and we're able to talk through this harm with each other, with therapists, with sisters, with friends. And there are studies coming out now showing that, and not small studies, Loyola University, I read one this morning from A&M. There are several studies that are showing that the effects of purity culture affect young women and young men. The effects of the shame portray or come out in ways very similar to victims of severe DV, domestic violence. Sorry for all you adults who don't normally watch YouTube. Domestic violence and domestic assault. And knowing that and reading these studies, I've even been sharing with Gloria how different things that even happened early on in my relationship with my husband before we were married. I was like, oh my gosh, like most people don't know this, but Sean couldn't hug me from behind, couldn't surprise me. It sounds so silly, but I was peeing on the floor because I was so scared, and he's never once laid a hand on me in any way. And it just, some of those come from trauma, but some of those come from just how afraid I was to mess up before marriage. So please know, we don't mean this against anyone. And if it's not your experience, if you had a great experience, I love that for you. We are just sharing ours. So purity balls, though, this is not a purity ball. It's just a dad being weird, if we're being honest. But this was happening. Like, I wanted a purity ring. I always wore rings. I bought rings from Walmart. Like, I wanted a purity ring so badly. And so I want to show you guys.
And a promise to God and to me to remain pure until the day you're married.
Purity culture is child abuse, because that is some insane fucking weird shit. My dad did the same thing. I mean, he didn't propose to me with a ring because that's like extra level of weird, but he gave me...
I didn't realize Hannah was texting me while I was screen recording.
Well, thank God she didn't say anything weird.
I know. So, yes, I forgot she was a stitch on this, but that is a dad presenting a purity ring to his child. And are you okay if I let her play out what she says?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay, listen, this girl, little history on her. She is a theologian. She went to school for theology. She has 100 different degrees from all the seminaries, but she has some very controversial attitudes towards church, and I understand that, but she's very knowledgeable. And so I do use her sometimes to just get her take. I am not someone who believes in one person's opinion is better than anybody else's. She's going to say that purity culture is child abuse. It wasn't in my home. It was in some. So bear with whatever she has to say. We're going to start her over, though.
With a ring, because that's like extra level of weird. But he gave me purity jewelry. It was a necklace and earrings where I promised my virginity to my dad until I gave it to my husband, because that's not problematic. And it's eternally fascinating to me that purity culture only seems to apply to women, specifically young girls. I was 8 years old the first time I was told that if I wore shorts, I would cause a man to stumble and it would be my fault. I didn't cause him to do anything. He needs to watch where he puts his fucking feet. Seems like they missed the verse about if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and cast it in the fire. The onus of all sexual misconduct is put on young women. If a man does something to you, or what were you wearing? You did something. You caused him to sin, which is hilarious considering that men are supposed to be the leaders, but we can't trust them to lead themselves. And in fact, I brought up that point in Sunday school once and was asked to leave. You're taught that the one thing that will make you worthless to your future husband is having sex before marriage, but also you're supposed to be a porn star on your wedding night and to never say no to your husband, because once you're married, you don't get consent anymore. Causes eternal trauma around shame and guilt, dysfunctional sexuality, vaginismus, where women's pelvic floors get so tight they can't have penetrative sex because it hurts them too much. It's why the church fights tooth and nail to protect abusers while blaming the victims. And purity culture doesn't end when you get married. No, because if your husband cheats on you, it's your fault for not being submissive enough. I think I'll take the drag queens.
Super weird behavior for a dad to be doing that. Like, promising your dad you're going to save your virginity. That's weird.
So did you hear the part at the end where she said, if your husband cheats on you, you're then blamed?
Yes.
So I had a boyfriend. You wouldn't know him. He never saw the light of day in the church, but we dated for a short period. We dated periodically. Like, I went to holidays with his family. I was really close with his family. And he asked me on a date. He was like, will you go see this movie with me? I remember the movie. It was the dumbest. It was The Mist or The Fog. Whatever the hell that movie was. Worst movie in mankind ever made.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're in the movie theater and he asked if I was still not going to have sex with him. And I said, yeah, I'm not. He goes, okay. Well, I don't want you to be mad, but I did have sex with someone last night.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, okay. And he literally gave me scripture to justify. And it was like some verse, if you as a wife are not pleasuring your husband, then don't be surprised if he, and I was like, you're not my husband.
Yeah, what?
But yeah, so that is just a little picture of what guys were saying to us at the time.
Oh my God. I don't think that I ever got that.
And you know what's funny? And even as a kid, I never was mad. I knew my friends were having sex. I knew people around me were having sex. Yeah. I was never like upset with you or like,
right.
How dare you? Or thought you were going to hell. It's the weirdest thing. You never think about it affecting other people. The shame is solely self-felt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you talked a lot about gender roles or why that they focus on gender roles. So I do want to explain some things. We have to remember the period of time that the Bible was written in was unreal. Mm-hmm. Girls were being married off at 13 or 14. They were property.
Yeah.
Their value did come from offering children. Hear me out on this, though. People always say life expectancy wasn't high. Why people in the Bible living to be 800 years old?
Bro, for
like,
real.
I'm calling bullshit. Everyone's like, their life expectancy, they were dying in 30s. Beg to differ. Moses, for real, lived forever. Like, the fact that he's still not alive is amazing.
Hundreds and hundreds of years these people are living.
So the Bible is one of those things you constantly have to be reading it, constantly have to be also reading other things on how to interpret, because history is so strange during biblical times.
And the whole point of why Jesus spoke in parables is because he wanted you to interpret his teachings the way that you understand them.
Well, and something my pastor here talks about is some parts of the Bible are descriptive and some of the parts of the Bible are prescriptive. So some of these, like the Old Testament, descriptive. Not telling us how we're supposed to live today necessarily. Yes, there are parts, right? Like the 10 Commandments, we all swear by that. Mm-hmm. But let me just point something out. There is no commandment that says thou shalt not have sex before marriage. Doesn't exist.
Which is kind of crazy because you would think that it would be one.
Honor your father and mother, but no, don't have sex.
Yeah.
T.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that we put on this like big expectation of literal teenagers to not give in to what their body is telling them. Like, it's gonna happen, and I'm like praying that my kids wait till they're at least an adult. But if they don't, there's gonna be no shame, because I think my job is, one, to keep them safe, and two, to guide them to a place where they're going to make decisions that are for their best interest.
Yeah. And ultimately, the biggest thing I focus on with my kids and my husband in general too is just, can we communicate about it?
Yeah.
I'll talk more about it later, but the way it was presented to me, I never got a sex talk. Like,
Same.
yeah. And
it was just, don't do it.
Don't do it. Yes.
Yes.
And I did my makeup today so that I won't cry. So that's my main goal. But so I want to finish reading this thing about gender roles and then dive into some scriptures, and then we'll go on from there. Okay.
Let's do it.
So, things to remember in the history of Israel. Girls were expected to remain virgins until they were married. Again, that's like 13, 14 years old. Virginity was highly prized in ancient Israel, not only because of its religious implications, but also because virginity implied a certain measure of self-control and obedience. Qualities desirable in a wife and predictive of marital fidelity. So there were no weddings in ancient Israel. And my dad and I have talked about this a lot. I'm like, how did you just know? Like, was there a ceremony? No. There was an engagement period. So your dad would tell my dad that I was to marry you. The dowry would happen. I don't remember who pays who. But then I would move into your family home and I would live with your family for a period. And that would be our like engagement.
Right.
And then one night we would be married, and that would be the consummation of the marriage. And so there's a scripture we're going to read, and it says that then they would have to show proof of virginity. Proof of virginity back then was bloody sheets. Different things can break your hymen.
Yeah.
Right? If you break your hymen, you're no longer a virgin. You could not be a virgin and nobody ever flippin' touched you. So the blood on the sheets is meant to symbolize that you're a virgin. Your parents can show the proof, or he can show the proof, or whatever. This verse is so strange and unreal to modern day American women. Once I read it, we'll talk about what some of the commentaries I read said about it, because it is probably intended to be interpreted very differently and have nothing to do with sex.
All right.
All right, we're going to go to Deuteronomy 22, 13 through 21. If a man takes a wife and after sleeping with her dislikes her and slanders her and gives her a bad name, saying, I married this woman, but when I approached her, I did not find proof of her virginity, then the young woman's father and mother shall bring to the town elders at the gate proof that she was a virgin. The proof being a sheet. They call them wedding sheets, and they would be bloody. Her father will say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man. By the way, 13-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely gross.
Her father will say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he has slandered her and said, I did not find your daughter to be a virgin. But here is the proof of my daughter's virginity. Then her parents shall display the cloth before the elders of the town, and the elders shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give them to the young woman's father, because this man has given an Israelite virgin a bad name. She shall continue to be his wife. He must not divorce her for as long as he lives. If, however, the charge is true and no proof of the young woman's virginity can be found, she shall be brought to the door of her father's house, and there men of her town shall stone her to death. She has done an outrageous thing in Israel by being promiscuous while still in her father's house. You must purge the evil from among you. Okay. So I say commentary, and what I'm not realizing is probably most people don't know this. So commentary, well, I guess some people will probably call it something different, but is essentially some people will read the Bible, and then there are certain people who are, I don't know, considered higher status or whatever in the church. Not even higher status. I don't even know how to explain it. More educated, more knowledgeable than me. And they will explain why things like this are important. This is a commentary. I will link it below. It's called Light in Gray Places, Studies on Hope, Sex, and Scripture. And this says, Deuteronomy 22, 13 through 21 is one of the scarier passages for impressionable young Christian women, as it seems to hold up premarital sex as a crime punishable by death. Even for married women, such as myself, a passage can be puzzling. Hymeneal blood following intercourse is notoriously unreliable proof of virginity. Anyways, so what she argues is this man being upset that his bride is not a virgin is not about her being a virgin. It is about selfishness and being unable, like not liking her specifically. Him making that claim is a lie. Her parents may or may not have proof, but she argues that it speaks to the parents and the child relationship. What lengths will your parents go to prove you're worthy?
Right.
So her argument is this entire thing isn't about sex. It's about a man's willingness to love the woman he chose or accept what he chose. And if he doesn't, he disrespects that girl.
Yeah.
Child. How willing and how loving and accepting and Christ-like are her parents? Christ hasn't lived yet, but anyways, how loving and are caring of her parents to say, oh, hell no. I'm going to show proof that my daughter's a virgin.
Yeah.
Because that is her entire wealth at that point. And that's how her family builds wealth. And that's how her family continues to grow. And so, even though that whole scripture, because believe it or not, that scripture was laid out to us so many times and said, here's how you know you have to be a virgin when you're married.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found that very interesting. Another commentary that I read about that though was this one's called Proving My Virginity, Deuteronomy, Pap Smears, and the Hymen Myth. The first time she went to go get a pap smear at 21, they asked her if she wanted one, and she said no. And the gynecologist asked her why. She's raised Jewish Christian.
Oh, okay.
The doctor asked her why. She said, for religious purposes, I don't want my hymen to be broken. Excuse me. The doctor explained to her, while I understand your religious worries and ovarian and different types of cancer are far less likely if you're not sexually active.
Right.
This could save your life. She, after being presented with the evidence, said, I would rather have my hymen broken than remain a virgin. And like the doctor was even able to tell her, like the hymen, when it's broken, does not necessarily bleed. And you can't necessarily expect that. And I think it's so funny because I remember you're going to laugh at this. So we had a giant pool. Oh, big old pool. They like
Why didn't I go in it?
What? I was like, we had whole pool parties all the time. Like that was the big thing, was the youth would come over and we'd just all swim all day.
Bro, I was not invited to those things.
Clearly. You were having sex.
I was busy with boys, literally.
But I got kicked. We were playing chicken or something. I got kicked right in the hoo-ha.
Really?
And I started bleeding. And I remember being so upset. And I think I even bled so bad that my parents were like, has anyone touched you recently? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. But I just remember thinking, am I broken? Like,
yeah.
Am I now defiled because I got kicked in the vagina?
Kicked in the vagina.
It was so sad. Okay.
You poor child.
Yeah. Okay. So the second verse I want to talk about is Leviticus 21, verse 13. Oh, the woman he marries must be a virgin. He must not marry a widow, a divorced woman, or a woman defiled by prostitution, but only a virgin from his own people, so that he will not defile his offspring among his people. I am the Lord who makes him holy. So I found this verse very interesting because this is one that was offered up to me as one that justifies purity culture. This verse is defining, what's his name? Aaron, I believe, who Moses' brother. You know, Aaron's generation, or Aaron and his sons take over running. They become the priests, essentially.
Okay.
And this is an instruction for Aaron's sons. So again, I'm just like, okay, so his sons had to marry a virgin.
Yeah.
But also, do you notice that every one of these verses, even though it can be harmful for the woman if she lies,
Right.
they are instructions to men. But I did want to read some others real quickly. If you Google Bible verses that define the best wife or Bible verses that define what a wife should be, this is the one. But I love this verse because it doesn't mention sex at all. And, you know, something that a lot of commentaries that I read talked about, but I haven't read yet, is a lot of what was happening during this time too was men were not made to be virgins. Like, men were asked to marry virgins.
Yeah.
But men were not made to be. And men, this is biblical times, not today, but men were just out here also seeing prostitutes, assaulting women. And that's something that's not considered is while these were children being married, I think honestly, a lot of times the reason they were children was because they were like, we need a girl young enough to still be a virgin. And so I think it's important to know that biblical times cannot be compared to today.
Yeah.
And
this reminds me of Bridgerton.
I haven't read it, seen it, whatever it is. I don't
Karen.
Guys,
what is wrong with you?
I don't have time.
Okay, Bridgerton is like the old times, okay? Where
But not this old, just a little.
Not this old, right? But where women had to be virgins, and even if you kissed a man, you had to marry that girl. Like, if you kissed a girl, you married her. But the men would just go to brothels, and like it didn't matter for them. They're just doing everybody.
It was very much like that in this time too. Was
yeah.
There's a scripture, I didn't write it down, so I'm sorry, but I know it exists. I read it yesterday. If you rape a woman, you need to marry her, and that's because you defiled her.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to women are ruined. The minute that happens to them, they're ruined, and that girl had no hope. And like that just, it breaks me because I get it. Like, that's not how a woman should feel. But at the time, women were just not viewed the same. And so I understand that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read this verse, and it is Proverbs 31. It's called "The Wife of Noble Character," is like the heading. If you don't know, sometimes Bibles put headings in there. And then I want to read for you guys verses that were never taught to Gloria or I, that I think paint the most beautiful picture of sex. Oh, our parents listen to this. It's fine. Anyways, the Bible is wild because there are parts where people are just chopping heads and putting swords through each other's chests and burning their kids alive. But then there are parts where it's like, you raped a woman, you defiled her, but you still got to keep her for the rest of your life. And then there's whole verses where it just describes women like we are I don't even know. Don't worry about me. I got it. Okay. So Proverbs 31. The wife of a noble character says, starts in verse 10, sorry. A wife of a noble character who can find? She is worth more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family. She portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She seems that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand, she holds the staff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. I believe that's a sewing reference.
Yeah.
Sorry. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected by all the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed in strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, as he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all her hands have done, and let her work bring her praise at the city gate.
Who are all these women?
This is just defining. So in this verse, essentially, he's defining what a good woman would look like, defining
Right.
what the ideal wife would look like.
God, it sounds like a lot of work.
Is that not what we do, though? Are we
Yeah,
not
but-
awake to feed our family at night? And do we not stay up to finish things? I mean, while that looks different for every single woman,
Right.
we got our kids, we got custody.
Yeah.
Like, and I think about my mom, like, I used to wake up, when she would wake up, I don't know if it was like I heard her alarm or what, but some mornings I'd be awake at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then she'd be off to work, and then come dinner time, she'd be late for dinner, but like she was always working.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it felt the same way for your mom. Like,
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't help that my mom didn't have a husband that helped even with bills. His money was his money, and he wanted to waste it all.
your dad had one of the best wives and didn't even know it.
Oh, he knew it.
Oh, okay.
He for sure knew it. No, that's a lot of things that, like, yeah, my dad was an alcoholic, and yeah, I seen like the ugliness that can portray, you know, but I never, not once in my lifetime, doubted the immense love that my dad had for my mom. I think my dad felt like my mom was truly the best thing that ever happened to him. He was broken. And I don't
Yeah.
know, I don't even think my mom knows a lot of what could have happened to him. But again, like, trauma.
I can't express how important it is. Like, if you are someone, even talking about parents, if you experience trauma in your childhood and you have not truly talked it out with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
therapy, a friend, whoever, like there are things that happen to my parents that I will never know or understand because
Oh yeah,
they've
for
never
sure.
talked about them to us. And sometimes I wish they had. I wish I knew more and really understood, because it's all been like lightly touched upon during my childhood.
My mom is very open about the things that happen to her. Now as her kids are adults, you know, we've had conversations about
Mhm.
things that went on when she was a kid.
Yeah.
But I do think that it should be talked about because it helps you understand your mom or your parents in general. And it helps you understand why they did the things they did and why they parented the way that they did.
Yeah.
And it honestly, it relinquishes any anger or resentment towards your parents. Like, I think that these conversations should be had.
Yeah. I will say, so I was not having sex at a young age. I waited till the first time someone took it from me. But I don't, and I never have, and it's actually, sometimes I get mad at myself. I've never felt anger
Mm-hmm.
or hurt or frustration outside of the pain I have felt in those moments.
Yeah.
And then the trauma that my body experiences after. I've never been like, that person's a terrible person. I wish I had put them in jail. And like, I do believe that a lot of the people I had terrible experiences with wound up having beautiful, loving families.
Mm-hmm. And you're like, how?
And I'm not like, how? I honestly think my parents taught me so much about forgiveness and love and understanding, and again, we can help everybody type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that the reason I never felt anger towards those people and why I felt more shame towards myself is because of the way sex was portrayed. I was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was the person who I did something for them to think they could have sex with me or could kiss me, or
Mm-hmm.
that in some way I did that. So that's a me thing.
Right.
I'm going to get up, dust off the dirt, and go on with my life and just cut them out. And they didn't do anything wrong. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, we were all young. We all learned different ways. So that's probably true. Like, the only time I ever feel like I was truly assaulted in a way in my life that person should have gone to jail was my doctor.
Yeah.
And he didn't do half of the things to me that have been done to me, you know? You and I kind of talked about this yesterday, so I'll talk about it now. Boys would just kiss me.
Which is wild.
Like, I don't know, but the guilt that you internalize, like, I feel bad that they kissed me. I feel bad, like, that I might have done something to make them think they could. But then people were always hurt when I shared with them that I wasn't into them.
You're like, don't be hurt. It's just the truth.
Okay, we're just not going to go into depth about the things that happened to me. This is part of something I shared with Gloria yesterday was, I wonder if the way purity culture was laid out, right? Men believed that we were enticing.
Right.
They lost all self-control. We were just out here like, kiss me, please. And we believed that anytime someone kissed us, we brought it on ourselves.
Right.
I wonder if, being the pastor's daughter, if I wasn't psychologically the prize to be won.
Yeah.
That bothers me. Because I can't undo that in my brain now that I've thought about that. And I think through relationships I had, even with people who never kissed me, that were platonic. But things they said to me at different times and things. And I'm like, did I make them think I was going to be with them too? Like, no, I didn't make anybody think anything. I was just out here being a kid.
And I will say, I think because of your personality too, because you are the type of person, and it's most likely from the way that you were raised, you just were a friendly person. Like, you wanted to be friends with everybody. Boys, girls, it didn't matter. But I think that they took advantage of the fact that you were so friendly. And it doesn't make it okay, because it's not okay for somebody to offer up friendship and for you to go, oh, well, because I want to kiss them, I'm just going to do it because she's so nice, and she's probably just going to do it because she's so nice.
Yeah, I don't know. My dad is very much like that, right? Like, people are like, he's going to be my friend. My dad has wound up in some funky friendships over the years. And it's like, how'd you manage to get in with that motorcycle gang, bro? And he's like, I was just nice to them. I don't know that they liked me.
Yeah.
Here's where my brain was going with that. It just goes back to all of us. We're going through biology. Like, our bodies were starting to have these hormones.
Yeah.
And we didn't understand or know what to do with them, or know a healthy, like, hell, make out with your boyfriend.
Right.
And I'm probably not going to feel that way in a few years with my kid.
Yeah.
But I wish we were told through this kind of teaching that the minute you start kissing, it's never going to stop. It's just going to keep going. You're going to be having sex before you know it. So I think it was almost expected that if you kiss someone willingly, you might as well just have sex with them.
Yeah. Like, you've already damaged yourself by kissing them.
Because one thing purity culture teaches is, I'm like shaking as I say this, every time a woman gives up a piece of herself to somebody. So sometimes that's kissing, sometimes that's sex. It depends on what you believe. But every time you do that, you give a piece of yourself to somebody else. And that was the main goal, right? Was to be able to give your whole self
right
to your spouse. Imagine we're a pizza. What was left of us by the time?
Right.
But think of it this way. Hypothetical kid raised in a house where they're abused. They grow up into addiction and they're abused. They grow up in high school, they're abused. College, they're abused. And I'm talking sexually. By the time they get married, even if they don't believe this, because whether anyone wants to admit it or not, the church is not the only ones who teach purity culture. And whether they are taught about Christ or not,
right,
we are still taught that every time we have sex, we give a little bit of ourselves to somebody else. Which I'm not saying is bad or that doesn't happen. But nothing that child gave of herself was willingly. And then she has to get to the point where she has to choose to love and be loved by someone and believe that having sex with them has any value.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's the damage that this does. If you teach a woman that her value is based on how pure she is or how much sex she has in her life.
Yeah.
You don't know what else is happening to her in that time or later in life.
Yeah.
You don't know what parts of her you're hurting. And then if you're teaching men to only want women who have that value, but you're not also teaching them to value the woman. You're one of my best friends and you have that value whether you had sex at 13 or not.
Right. I agree.
And I mean, we don't just walk around asking people. Actually, Sean had to do this thing once. I don't even remember where he worked at the time. But he said, I have to come up with a icebreaker. I said, oh, I have the perfect one.
Oh, no.
He said, what? I said, when did y'all lose your virginity? He goes, you can't ask people that. And I was like, what else are you going to ask, though, that people are going to be like, oh, shit. Or like get to know each other really quickly.
And very well.
Okay, so these are the verses that we're never taught, and I bet you money this is the first time you've heard these verses in this context. Okay, so the first one is Song of Solomon. The title that ChatGPT gave this, because I am using the Bible to read these, but I did type some stuff into ChatGPT to see what information it had. And it titled this The Celebration of Erotic Love.
Nice. Okay.
This is Song of Solomon? Shit. Song of Songs. Am I crazy? Is that normally Song of Solomon?
I think it's Solomon. Do you want me to look it up real quick?
This is just the first time I've ever seen Song of I'm in the Bible app.
Oh.
Is that a thing?
Song of Songs?
That's what it says. Oh, AKA Song of Solomon. Oh my gosh. Okay. 6 through 9. Okay.
That's a weird name to call it. Song of Songs.
Song of Songs? I've literally never heard that.
Neither have I.
So this is verse, does it end in 9? It does. Okay. Chapter 7, verses 6 through 9. Bible's so boring. Until you find this. How beautiful you are and how pleasing, my love, with your delights. Your stature is like that of the palm, and your breasts like clusters of fruit. I said, I will climb the palm tree, and I will take hold of its fruit. May your breasts be like clusters of grapes on the vine, the fragrance of your breath like apples, and your mouth like the best wine.
Our pastor, can't remember which one anymore, but our pastor did preach on Solomon, and it was like a whole thing about sex. Do I remember exactly everything he said? Absolutely not.
Well, here's it stops at verse 9, but if you read past it, it says, "May the wine go straight to my beloved, flowing gently over lips and teeth. I belong to my beloved, and his desire is for me." So this is the woman's perspective. "Come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages, and let us go early to the vineyards to see if the vines have budded." That was a hard one. Okay, anyways, so we're going to go on to the next verse is Proverbs 5:18-19. "May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always, and may you ever be intoxicated with her love." And ChatGPT says this encourages sexual enjoyment in a marriage and involves intoxicating pleasure as a good thing. Oh, the one above says it's the Song of Solomon one says it's sex positive. It celebrates consensual and passionate and mutual desire without shame.
Yeah.
It's not metaphorical. Early Jewish and Christian interpreters often look at it literally. I don't know. Whatever. It's not literal, okay? My breasts are not fruit. If you bite me, literal. The next verse, 1 Corinthians 7:3-5. "The husband should give his wife over her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his body, but the wife does." It says this is sex positive, and Paul is framing sex in a marriage as a mutual, shared, and respectful, with neither party dominating the other.
I love that.
I do too.
And I agree with it completely.
And the one we'll go to next, and we'll move on from here, is Genesis 2:25. "And the man and his wife were both naked, and they were not ashamed." Contextually, Adam and Eve sinned, realized they were naked, and they hid from God. And they clothed themselves. And when God found them, they were like, "Please don't look at us, we're naked."
And God
the
was
point
like,
is, they didn't.
Who told you?
Who told you were naked? So that was the thing.
Who
Was
told you?
God never assigned shame to nakedness, which, like,
Can you imagine if that never would have happened? We would just be walking around with our bits out. That's funny.
But this verse implies a state of trust, vulnerability, and acceptance, and physical intimacy as part of God's design before shame entered the picture. Yeah, I love it.
Bring back the shameless sex, okay?
Okay, so Gloria and I talked about it during our quick little break. This is a big topic, and we have covered kind of the background, the history. So I think we're going to close it out for this week and not have this be a 3-hour-long episode.
Yeah.
And next week, we will record our stories, how it affected us, how it carried over into our marriage. And marriages, so separate. We're not married to the same person. Sorry,
And we're not married as well.
Yeah, we're also not married. And then also we have some experiences that were sent to us by some followers we could share next week and such, and some videos that I brought for this week, but we'll save them for next week.
Yeah. So we hope you enjoyed it, and we know it's a heavy topic, but it's also a super important one to cover.
So proud of you.
You know what? I'm proud of us.
Yeah, I am too. It's a hard topic, and it's honestly something that I want to say was taught our whole lives, but like is ingrained in the kids of our generation.
Yeah, and even if we weren't aware how ingrained it was, even at the time, it was still there.
Yeah. Well, and even things we've talked about this week, just leading up to this, you have been like, I don't think I realized how much it affected me or your sisters or different people around us. Yeah. It's wild. Okay.
And honestly, I think it's going to be freeing for both of us to have the conversation.
And honestly, when I think back to why we were like, we want to start a podcast 3 or 4 years ago, it was having conversations about stuff like this where we were like, no one's having those open conversations. Like, yes, there are podcasts. I listened to a shit ton of them this week.
Yeah.
Between couples that are married or people still in the church or people that have left the church. But no one is actively having these conversations with their friends.
Yeah.
Like, how did this affect you? And honestly, no one's bringing the pastors into it, which I don't think any of them would be willing to sit down. But if there is any pastors out there that would be willing to sit down and discuss teaching purity culture and what you thought about it at the time.
Yeah.
And if you how you view it now, I think that's worth a conversation. I don't think it was the pastor's faults.
No.
I think this was a systemic issue, honestly. They were just trying to figure out a way to teach us to be pure and to be safe. And then just did it the wrong way.
It backfired. It didn't work.
It
didn't
really
work.
didn't. It's not even that it didn't work. It just, if it did work, we have issues.
It was harming, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so many things are throughout history, but yes.
Yeah. So we hope that in hearing us discuss it, that it was kind of freeing for you as well.
Yeah. And I hope if you have stories that you, even if you don't want them shared, I hope you feel like you can reach out to us, or that you have anyone you can reach out to.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you can reach out to us and we'll read them. Not on camera or on camera if you want us to. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope everyone just feels like they can share their story of how this culture and these teachings affected you. And I hope maybe some of the scriptures we shared today will help you view sex differently. Because I think God created sex to be a great thing.
I think so too.
Well, thank you all for coming and enjoying our chaos, but staying here for the company. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.